Hi everyone, welcome back to Highly Inspired. I'm Ella.
And I'm Jordan.
Hey guys, welcome back this week. We're joined with a guest this week, which is really exciting, who's not only been on the front lines of all of these COVID vaccine mandate protests that have been going on in New York, but also has a very interesting personal background. She and her boyfriend both live in New York and they make independent films together. And she also has some very interesting health habits and kind of homeopathic beliefs. Thank you, Chloe, so much for coming on. Jordan and I are really excited to have you on. We've been looking forward to this for a few weeks. Mm-hmm. Jordan, you can agree.
I'm so glad that you're here. You're coming to us live all the way from New York. So we're on completely opposite sides of the country, which is crazy. And a lot of this episode is going to be talking about New York, talking about the state of the country right now, talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, topics that we talk about often.
But we're going to,
but it's going to be a little bit different today because Chloe, you have a very in-person, hands-on experience with this, probably one that is very different than Ella and I have had throughout this whole ordeal. So we are so excited to have you on and to hear about it. And why don't you say hi?
Yeah, why don't you say hi and just kind of introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi everyone. Hi Ella. Hi Jordan. It's an honor to be here. I've already spoken to Ella at length and it was awesome. So I can tell that this is going to be like amazing.
Yes.
I'm just very excited.
Awesome.
So,
well, yeah, I know we were really.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. I know it was nice that we got to chat before all this because you got to kind of know me and Jordan better and I got to know you better. And I was wondering if you could kind of maybe walk us through what New York was like kind of leading up to the pandemic. And then once COVID hit, what did that kind of shift look like? And I know a lot of people saw like the photos of the empty streets and stuff, but for anyone who didn't experience that, what was it like? Boots on the ground.
Yeah, totally. Well, it was definitely a dramatic shift from just before the lockdowns to during, and then as well as several months and more than a year after. The entire energy and attitude has changed for sure. I was actually waitressing at a movie theater when the pandemic hit. I'd been doing that for 8 years between the two locations where I come from, Kansas City and here. And I've been in Kansas City for 5 years, or I'm sorry, I've been in New York for 5 years.
Okay.
But so I was interacting with a lot of people because I would serve volumes of about 40 people at a time. And I had a lot of coworkers from different backgrounds and everything. And I remember when coronavirus first hit the news and everybody was talking about how it was going to come and everything. I remember there were people who were saying, oh, it's going to be really bad. Mm-hmm. And like they were even servers, you know, they were like, it's going to be really bad and it's not going to stop. And I didn't believe them. I was like, that's ridiculous. Like it's just going to be barely anything. They're just hyping it up. Mm-hmm. And I would even say like, you're young and healthy, you're not going to get sick, you know? And I still think that's the case. But when I was, when they actually did shut everything down, and furloughed everyone at my job, what happened was, you know, it was the 2 weeks to slow the spread thing. And I actually got scared because I didn't know anything about coronavirus yet. So I was kind of afraid to go out and everything. And so was my boyfriend, Cody. We were both afraid to go out. I would go to the grocery store. I remember I took a picture once of myself. I didn't own a mask yet, right? So I took a strip of some old pajamas that were already torn, right, with dinosaurs on it. I wrapped it around my face and it looked ridiculous. It looked like, you know, like how in Power Rangers, you can see their lips through the fabric because it's so tight. Mm-hmm. That's what it looked like. And then I put a scarf over my hair because I didn't want anything to touch my hair, any particles to get in my hair, and then I would get it all over everywhere. And I wore like a button-up shirt all the way to my chin. And I was like, this is what I'm going to go grocery shopping in. And I wore gloves because I was so scared because I didn't know what anything was. And I remember walking around Prospect Park in Brooklyn and seeing that there were so many people out and they weren't social distancing. I remember making a post saying like, oh my God, it's like they don't even care. You know?
Yeah.
And then, yeah. And I remember getting pizza from, it was like a couple months or something where we didn't eat out at all. You know, we didn't get, because everything was closing down, and we didn't get any takeout for a while because we were scared. And then we finally got a pizza locally, and I brought it and I put paper towels down on the table in between the pizza and the table to make sure that it wouldn't leave like anything. It was all just paranoid crap because that's the kind of mindset everybody was in, right? But now it only took a few months for me to be like, it's all a lie, you know?
Was there a specific
and then
thing?
I started.
Oh, sorry. Continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Was there like a specific thing that after a few months you were like, no,
yeah, this is fishy?
Well, I'm used to being very critical of the things that government do and the things that health measures because of being vegan and because of knowing more about history, all these things. Once you kind of develop critical thinking about one issue and realize that the mainstream narrative is different from what you learn when you do your research, then you start to have that critical thinking in place to notice it with other things, right? Mm-hmm. So that all those red flags started going off all over the place. Even though I had voted for Trump and Trump had been pushing the vaccine before he left office, right? Even though that happened, I was still skeptical because I was already skeptical about vaccines. And I was already skeptical about the masks because I knew from reading up on it that in previous epidemics, what they'd done back in the old timey days or whatever was they would have outdoor hospitals where they would put people in beds outside so that they could get sun and air because that kills disease, right? Airborne pathogens.
Yep.
And once I realized like, okay, they're instead of doing that, they're having us stay inside and they're having us breathe our own air in a mask. Like that seems almost like they're trying to get us sick.
Yeah.
And then, so all these red flags started going off and I stopped believing the fear mongering, so to speak. It was more just scary seeing everyone around me at first being scared. And then once I was like, okay, once I like got past that, I went back to my normal self who is skeptical of everything, you know?
Yep.
Was it frustrating?
But it's very surreal for sure.
Yeah. Was it frustrating when, you at first you were kind of on the same page with people in terms of complying and being scared of the virus and kind of, we didn't know what was going on. It was very easy to like easily adapt that mindset. But then after a few months, when you kind of walked through this change that you had, did you find it frustrating that so many other people probably around you in New York were still kind of in this brainwash, scared place, and it kind of that like groupthink held New York back from moving out of this faster than other states?
Yeah. It's been incredibly frustrating. I remember in the beginning, even though I was scared, before I went into like, oh gosh, I'm going to wear a mask and gloves to the grocery store mode, I remember seeing people on the train wearing masks, and it was like weird. It was weird in the transitional period. It was like 50-50 people wearing masks and not on the train because it wasn't mandated yet. And I remember thinking, oh, masks on the train, that seems silly, but then very quickly slipping into it and then out of it again. And now I see masks on the train, and part of it in New York is there's a lot of crazy people on the street who, you see reports of people slashing each other in the subway, pushing each other on subway tracks, crazy things like that, right? Because there's people who just snap and do crazy stuff. So for me, even though I didn't believe in the masks, I like started wearing the mask on the train because I didn't want some crazy person to attack me or yell at me, you know? And I've been doing that for months, over a year, even though I don't believe the masks work whatsoever. And I think that's a lot of it is people are afraid of, a lot of it is peer pressure. People are afraid of what everybody else around them is saying. A lot of people here too, young people are transplants, right? They come from other cities and stuff like that. And they build up their little community amongst their friends. Their friends are almost like their family. And when they find those friends, they are scared to lose them. And a lot of times when they lose them, it's going to be over politics or it's going to be over something like this. Mm-hmm. So that's an important thing to think about when you think about young people in New York City, is like a lot of them, they don't have their family here, or they don't have a significant other who agrees with them on these things or whatever. I'm very lucky because Cody and we've both been red pilled for a long time. We both agree on this stuff. Mm-hmm. We've both been vegan for a long time. We both know when to see these red flags, and we can band together and we can kind of help each other through these kind of crazy, surreal events, right?
Yep.
But a lot of people my age don't have someone like that in their life. Mm-hmm. So they're just going with what other people are telling them because they're scared to say, well, I don't think so, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's scary. The thought of being alone in a big city is scary with the way that things can be. But recently I started taking my mask off on the train. I've done it like 4 times now.
That's awesome.
And
I respect that. I really
honestly,
respect that.
like, thank you. It was scary. You know, I was really scared like to do it. And again, not because of the virus, but because of other people.
Yeah.
But I did it and it wasn't scary. Mm-hmm. Honestly, because all throughout the pandemic, I've seen like every train ride I'll see like maybe one person who has their mask down or one person who doesn't have a mask at all. And I would just look at them like, I hope they know that I agree with them, but I can't show them that. Right. Yeah. and so this time I saw someone on the train without a mask and I was like, all right, I took it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. All it takes is one person.
I had a similar experience actually at the airport. I mean, I stopped wearing masks completely, even when they were required in California this past May. Jordan and I actually had an experience where we were at the grocery store. Because both of us weren't wearing a mask, we were checking out. No one had said anything to us up until this point. And then the superintendent of the store, remember, she came up to us and she was like, put your mask on, and was being really rude. And we were like, sorry, we don't have any. Like, that was my thing, is like, I just stopped owning them, because then I was like, hey, if you're gonna
require masks, they should have them on hand to give the people if they don't have one. That's what I think, and I don't even own it anymore.
They definitely give them out on the train.
Yeah. And you see all of these images of all of the wasted masks too, all the trash. It's insane, and it's really sad and disgusting. I mean, it's not an ideal situation no matter what, but yeah, I think that no one should ever be kicked out of anywhere for not having one. But and it's super demoralizing and dehumanizing to not even be able to buy groceries because of that. Like that's the barrier that we're creating.
Yeah, I still wear my mask to the grocery store. It sucks, but I do. Because I don't want to get kicked out and I need food.
Yeah.
So
have you experienced? So you said that you are now not wearing the mask on the train. Was there ever a moment that you did experience like a borderline violent, aggressive situation because you didn't have it, or have you just seen it? Have you just been a bystander to it?
I've only been doing it for like, it was literally like 2 days that I did it. It was like back and forth. Like, it was like I went to a rally and I didn't wear the mask the whole time on the train going to the rally, and then coming back from the rally, I didn't wear the mask. And then the next day just going out, I did the same thing on the train.
Okay.
And I didn't experience any violence, any confrontation, nothing. The most I experienced was they would come on the loudspeaker and they would say, like, usually it's a recording, right? That says, that says masks are required on public transit, even if you're vaccinated. But this time when I had my mask off, it said it was a guy, like a live guy. And he said, just want to thank everybody who's wearing their mask.
Yeah.
That's keeping everyone safe. I really appreciate it. It was almost like a passive aggressive.
Oh, wow. Wait,
they've got cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like reverse psychology.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, interesting. I don't know how I feel
So it's
about
almost
that.
like making everybody stare at me.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. He's like, I don't want to be the enforcer, but let's see if everyone else can kind of put some pressure on you.
But it still ostracizes you in turn. Yeah.
I honestly thought,
but they didn't do anything to me.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's honestly, it helps when you have another person with you. Like if you were with Cody and like you guys both weren't wearing your mask, because that's what happened to us at the grocery store. Was like this lady backed off once it was two of us, because it was 2 against 1 and we had already bought our stuff, and like, what are you gonna do, you know? And so I think it's crazy how even just like having one other person that is on the same page with you and you're both in the same environment, how much more like powerful that is. And I think, you know, people have been made to feel like they're so alone in this and they can't speak out. Like I've had people message me and be like, thank you so much for you know, posting something really small on Instagram that I didn't think was significant. And they're like, I wish that I like had the balls to like post that, or, you know, like I didn't, like, I don't know how to come out even to my friends and explain how I feel. And I think especially like what you were saying, I think it's interesting when people live in a city like New York where people are used to living alone and not with either like a significant other or a partner, and they only have like this small group of friends. And if you step up and disagree, you're going to be left alone, and that's not a comfortable position to be in.
No.
And we've had a lot of friends actually that either had been in New York through COVID or have moved there since then, and they've kind of all band together from either high school or college. And it's been really interesting to kind of see their positions in all of this, because they're not even like, they're new to New York and they weren't really following these policies when they were living in other states, and now they're adapting it and like for vaccine passports and mandates and stuff. And I just would love to get in their brain and like understand why that is, you know?
Yeah. No, a lot of at least people that I know who have lived there even before the pandemic started, every time that I've asked questions on how is New York, what is your experience seeing the state of New York right now, or just questions along those lines, it's funny the prior bias that they bring to their answers of, oh, I haven't noticed anything, or, oh, it's still lovely, I love it, New York's awesome. And yeah, in a way that is probably true, but I feel like you probably would have a higher likelihood of saying it more as is. And that's actually an answer that I would want. I want someone who can reach that more real type of response, because it doesn't do anyone any good to hear like exaggerated or anticlimactic like truths about the state of New York, because we need to talk about it as it is. And same with all these other areas that are going through trying times right now.
Yeah. And I think,
yeah, for sure.
I think with, and this is actually a question I have for you, Chloe, but I think what's been interesting with like kind of seeing our friends that have moved there is that they, especially with the election going on and COVID, this was an opportunity for a lot of people to kind of get these good people points by being like, oh, I voted for Biden, like I'm for human rights, or other blanket statements like, oh, I wear my mask because I care about people's health. And it was kind of these blanket statements. It's like, hey, what is that? Yeah, virtual signaling, exactly, and performative activism. And then you start to see real opportunities, I think, to be a true activist and a true protester and someone really standing up for someone's rights. Like when you see all these nurses that are being fired or teachers being fired. And I don't see my friends taking that opportunity to go to these protests, and they're actually looking down on the people that are going to these protests and calling them far right or all these
conspiracy
theorists. So what has your observation been when you've been going to these protests, and what are the types of people that are there? Is it true that it's a bunch of far right people, or is it actually more of a diverse, normal crowd of regular New Yorkers?
It's definitely extremely diverse. I'll talk to you about that in a second, but I just wanted to say, to address what you were saying before about the masks on the train with the groups of people, like empowering you. Mm-hmm. So like even Cody, he's afraid. He still wears his mask. Like he was next to me wearing his mask because even though he doesn't believe in it like me, same fear, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't want to get messed with, right?
Yeah.
But I still feel comfortable with him next to me. But I did it by myself too.
Wow.
But also, you know what gave me the courage the very first time? Well, not first time, because the first time I was drinking a smoothie and I had my mask down. And then after I finished the smoothie, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to leave the mask down and see what happens. But yeah. And I was just kind of like sucking on the straw of an empty smoothie, just staring at everybody, you know, but when I was coming back from the rally, I had 3 male friends with me who were all from the rally. Right. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And one of them is a PhD in nutritional sciences who has given speeches about how this is all wrong and crazy and with actual science to back it up. His name's Chris Masterjohn. It's all one word on Instagram. Okay. He's amazing. He's not vegan like me, but he agrees with me on all this stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. So I had him with me. I had a gentleman with me who I talk to a lot, who's awesome. Who is not white, by the way. That's a big thing with these protests, right? They're all like, oh, it's white far right people. No, probably more than half of the people there are either black or brown, you know? Mm-hmm. And I had another person with me. I'm trying to remember who it was. I feel bad because I'm not remembering at this second because I'm like being recorded. So my brain isn't working the same. Yeah. But you know how when you have a camera on you, your brain stops working?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a little weird.
I had 3 people with me. Yeah. All with their masks down, or all without masks on at all. Not only were we riding without masks, we were walking around at the station and stuff. Nobody cared because nobody has ever been, as far as we know, fined for this. It's threats, but it's all empty because there is no law. This is a mandate, but not a law. There's a difference, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's like, what do they have on the books to charge you with, to ticket you or to arrest you or whatever, right? They have nothing because this is not a law. So point is, to get back to the protests, and I'm like so nervous now because I'm talking about like civil disobedience, right? And like I'm like, what if the authorities see this or whatever? But screw them. But, so it's like the protests, a lot of the speakers are black, and that's not just like, oh, we put them up as tokens or whatever. They're actually people who lost their jobs. Yeah. Right. Like Jo Rose is a teacher who lost her job, and she was crying in front of us when we were in Harlem, when she was doing the speech in front of Gracie Mansion, because she was talking about how, it's going to get me to tear up, but because I was crying, but she was talking about how the middle school kids she works with don't understand why she doesn't just get vaccinated to keep her job. They told her, why don't you do it so you can stay with us? Because we love you. Oh my God. That's dark. And she said to them, you know, when you're older, you'll understand why I'm doing this. Like, I'm doing it for you too. Yes. For future generations. Exactly. Yeah. So, I've met her. Well, I haven't really talked to her even, just because she's always very busy when I'm at the rallies. So she's got a lot going on. But I've talked to, there was, you know, my sign says vegan and unvaxxed on it. And it draws other vegans to me at the rallies. That was my intention. Yeah. Is because I knew that yeah, I knew that vegans have that critical thinking in place to say, okay, what the mainstream narrative is telling me about my health is bullshit, because they've already been telling me that about my diet. Mm-hmm. They've already been telling me that about sugar and about pharmaceuticals in general. Mm-hmm. So why would this be accurate? Mm-hmm. You know? So vegans are very skeptical, but veganism is, and yoga and all that stuff, are stereotyped to be left-wing positions, mm-hmm. even though that doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
Like,
but yeah,
it's kind of like how the Democrat Party has kind of co-opted blackness, right? Mm-hmm. They have the whole thing where if you're black, you have to be a Democrat, which mm-hmm. isn't true. Most of the people there, for all I know, I don't know who they voted for, but it's obvious that they're skeptical of what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So it's like vegans are drawn to me. They come up to me. They say, oh my God, I thought I was the only one who was vegan and unvaxxed. Why would any vegan get vaxxed? It has animal products in it. It has aborted fetuses in it. Why would we get vaxxed?
Yeah.
And they say they talk to their friends who are vegan, and that they treat them like they're evil, you know?
Yeah.
And because they're brainwashed. And so I had that sign. The first rally I went to, there were no other signs that mentioned vegan, which is like, yeah, it seems a little off topic until you talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. But there was one woman, a black woman, who had a sign that said, I'm a vegan, not a guinea pig. Mm. And I talked to her, and she ran up to me, and she was so excited, right? She was like, oh my God, I saw your sign from far away. I'm so excited. Yeah. And she is a COVID nurse who got fired.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah.
What are we doing?
She worked with COVID and she got fired. Yep. And
jeez.
Her man came to me as well, and he was awesome too. And people just keep coming up to me, all colors, all sexual orientations, all religions or lack thereof. It doesn't matter, right? And vegan and non-vegan. I've talked to so many people. I've seen them. I've also talked to like there's people from other countries who are there. Like there's people from Jamaica, there's people from Italy, there's people from all over the place who come to these rallies.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a black man from Jamaica, and he said that he thinks the BLM protests were, you know, all a scam, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought. You know, but you can't say that out loud in New York City.
Interesting. Why does he think that?
Because people will think you're racist.
Mm-hmm. So wait, before we go on about how it would be a scam. I would love to hear mm-hmm. that. Or if it's too far, you can decline. But
well, the way I feel about it is basically because I'm a person who, you know, since I'm white and straight, people are like, oh, you have privilege, right? But mm-hmm. I grew up poor, and I had as she knows, I've lost a lot of people and dealt with a lot of disease in my life and a lot of hardship, right? I've gone through a lot of trauma. I know what trauma feels like. I can't claim to know what trauma from your ancestry feels like, because that's on a level that's crazy. Like, that's deep, right? The idea that your ancestors were slaves, and it's traumatic just to think about that. Why would you trust anything the government says if your ancestors were slaves, or if there were Tuskegee experiments or any of that, mm-hmm. right? So it makes sense that Black people would not trust the health measures, you know, because they've been experimented on in the past, and they've been lied to. So that's why so many people there are Black, and why like 60% of young Black people in New York have not been vaccinated, which essentially makes this mandate segregation, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So, but the reason why the BLM thing is an issue, that's more coercion. Like, even after I was furloughed from my job, the people from my job were posting on social media without messaging me first. They were posting on social media saying, why didn't you post a Black square
oh my gosh.
for the protests, for the BLM protests. And they were trying to ostracize me, right? They were trying to, they were saying, oh, I found out you voted for Trump, so why didn't you post a black square? Why, as a Trump supporter, why don't you tell me your perspective on this, right? But I knew they didn't really want my perspective. They just wanted to make me look bad, right?
Yeah, they wanted to assert, virtue
it's all
signal.
coercion shit. Yeah. So, but it's like, I think what the BLM stuff does is it takes the trauma that Black people have from the poverty they've gone through, from all sorts of stuff like that, and from the mistreatment that their ancestors went through. Mistreatment's an understatement, but yeah. It takes the trauma and it manipulates those emotions in order to create chaos, violence, communism, etc. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's all just manipulation.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
But luckily most Black people are too smart to let that happen to them. They actually understand that, like, there's more going on than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Because they're not idiots, you know? I think that's the biggest mistake that the Democrats make when it comes to minorities, is they assume they're stupid. And that's like one of the most racist things you can do.
Yeah.
Right.
No, more like the most dehumanizing thing.
I totally agree. And I think that
exactly.
I think that what's been
my
friends who, you know, grew up in a very privileged socioeconomic group, and also grew up and they're white as well. The people that were the most supportive that I knew in this demographic towards the BLM movement, and were posting the black squares and were getting on other people for not posting black squares. Now I've been completely silent about the fact that New York is instituting a mandate that is essentially, like you said, segregation, where you have upwards of over 60% of a certain population that is vaccine hesitant, rightfully so, considering like you said, the history that the US government has done on Black people with vaccines and all sorts of weird Western medicine treatment. I mean, the list goes on. So they have every right to be hesitant of that. And I've been frustrated with my friends who come from actually privileged white backgrounds, who a year ago said that they were allies of Black Lives Matter, but now in this particular case, they're silent and Black lives don't matter. And then the other hypocrisy that I kind of wanted to touch on was the fact that in California, there's a lot of people that now embrace veganism. And I feel like it's more so not because they've done their research and they've gone through this kind of conversion belief period, but it's almost like trendy and cool and the new like fad. And we had someone that we lived with that was into that, and we had friends as well. And then when the vaccine came around, they were like the first people to get it. And I remember being like so confused because like I'm not vegan, but they were judging me for not getting the vaccine. And I was like, wait, isn't the whole point of like being vegan and into natural things is that you like are really careful about what you get put into your body? And like these people would talk about like having a good immune system. And I was like, what is happening?
There's no consistency. All these things are just sort of components of maybe say the left's sort of encouragement, and none of it really goes all together. It can't all be branched underneath, but they're trying to do that, but none of it makes any sense. No,
it doesn't make any sense. And that's the problem, is that if you don't figure out like what are your core beliefs and then be consistent with that, and then also really take ownership of what is freedom and what is freedom for everyone, no matter if you disagree with them, no matter their background, no matter their beliefs. If you don't have those two things figured out, then you're just going to be this vessel with the coolest, trendiest, brainwashed propaganda. You'll just adapt that and take that on as your identity, as opposed to really, you know, taking in and like, who am I? Yeah.
Or that's a sheep.
Yeah,
that's a sheep who's just blows with the wind. I think I heard someone say this: you're either a sheep or you're a sheepdog, or you're
what's a sheepdog?
Or like
herder?
a herder.
Okay,
but the sheepdogs are actually the most interesting, because a sheepdog knows how to lead when needed, but isn't so above and like on a pedestal that is going to tell people what to do. So actually, I think that if you can at least be a sheepdog and not a sheep, that is a good spot to be. Or yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah. When it comes to veganism, I always try to make this clear to people, especially in the movement, because I know that, so like, do you guys know about the 2030 agenda? Like the thing with the New World Order?
Yes, we did an
all
episode
that,
on that actually.
So,
yeah.
Cool. Awesome. I'll have to watch that one. But yeah. But so like, right, part of that and part of the climate change agenda and all that is making everyone vegan, right? Yes. And I don't agree with that. Like, I do not think you should ever mandate veganism. I don't think that you should say, look, vegan, that animal, like, yes, okay, technically cows are bad for the environment. When the whole factory farming is bad for the environment, it's bad for us in a lot of ways. But I'm not going to judge people if they're not vegan and throw them away like a baby with the bathwater because they're not vegan. Because if you don't make a decision yourself for what you want to do, then it's not going to stick. It's like you can hold a gun to somebody's head and say, do this because here's the ideology or whatever. But once you take that gun away, they're just going to find a gun and shoot you, you know, like it's like you want people to actually believe things. And the only way to really believe things is if it's your idea to believe them. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons why the vaccine mandates are so insane. That's why a lot of the people, there's people at the rallies who are vaccinated. Mm-hmm. It's not all anti-vaxxers or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's people who believe that you cannot tell other people what to do with their body. It's very simple. And so it's like, why would I be any different when it comes to veganism? Why would I say, oh, if you're not vegan, you're not a good person or something like that? I wasn't vegan until like 2015, you know? Mm-hmm. So who am I? Anytime I see someone who disagrees with me on something, I just see myself in the past. And I understand where they're coming from because I didn't know the things I know now. So everybody has potential, right?
Yeah, it's just a lack of information, or lack of knowledge. Yeah.
Or even just life experience.
As well as, and a lot of times too, the times when people are completely ignorant of certain ideas, part of it is because people in their lives who they have negative associations with push those ideas on them too hard sometimes. Like, it's like with religion. When I was growing up, when I was a teenager, I was an atheist and I was in the Midwest, and everybody around me, all the adults around me were just constantly like, you need Jesus, you know? And it made me want to be more of an atheist. It didn't make me want to be a Christian. Right.
Yeah.
So it's the same way with any of this stuff, whether it be the vaccine, veganism, etc. If you just are up in people's faces all the time about it. And I know I sound like kind of a hypocrite because I'm protesting, right? I have a sign and I'm walking down the streets of Manhattan screaming at people, right? But there's a difference between being outside in a public space where we're all allowed to be and we have free speech and yelling something and it's not harming anyone.
Yeah, and it's different.
And me telling every person in my family, if you get vaccinated, I'm not going to be your friend. I'm not going to be your family. I'm never going to see you again. You know, like, because I've known people who say, if you don't get vaccinated, I don't ever want to see you again, and you can never meet my children. Like they haven't said it to me personally, but I've seen posts from my friends who don't realize that I'm unvaccinated. Where they literally just make a blanket statement where they're just like, if you're unvaccinated, you're never seeing me again. And I was just like,
it's such an unnecessary,
it's crazy,
such an unnecessary extreme that is completely inappropriate and honestly tragic. I hope no one ever says that to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure people think that about me or whatever, but the thing is that I don't know. I think people lack the foresight, and maybe it's because we don't study history enough. Because I think if everyone knew their history, we wouldn't be having this problem right now. But I think that people lack the foresight of like, okay, well, I agree with the vaccine now, or like I don't mind showing my vaccine card to like get into a place right now. It doesn't bother me, or I'm even for it. But what happens when the next thing comes around that you disagree with? And like you were saying with the veganism, like you would, like that's something that you hold true and dear to your heart, but you would never impose that on someone else. And we're forgetting this like really revolutionary human experience of tolerance, and the state actually being protective of that and protective of your freedoms. And something that you brought up kind of with the 2030 plan that I think a lot of people aren't seeing is that we've been having this COVID situation going on, and we've been through that condition to give up our freedoms for safety, and have accepted this kind of new way of thinking. And then on the flip side, we've also had years and years of climate change and global warming discussions and kind of doing that fear mongering. So it's just a matter of time, I think, until these governments flip the switch on that, where then there's a carbon tax. I mean, we're already talking about a carbon tax for cars and stuff like that. And so it's going to, if we don't stand up and say no now, it's going to get to the point where something as simple as driving your car is going to be monitored, and you're going to have to pay extra for that. And the things that we do that are considered everyday experiences are going to be limited and become more expensive. And so I get frustrated with people when they don't see that foresight, and then get mad at you for actually, like, you're like, no, I'm not going to these protests. It's not just about the vaccine. It's something that's bigger than that. Is that how you feel? Do you feel like these protests are bigger than just, I don't want to get vaccinated? Like, do you think that there's...
Definitely. Yeah, it's definitely, because I believe in medical freedom in a lot of ways, not just with the vaccine. Like, for instance, like you were saying, or I was saying, that I wouldn't force veganism on anyone else. So people would probably assume, oh, you wouldn't want vegan kids, right? But I do, actually.
Yeah.
I do want to raise my kids vegan. Mm-hmm. But, that's different because I'm responsible for their nutrition, right? They're too young to understand how nutrition works, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm giving them what they need, like as somebody who wasn't raised vegan, like I kind of wish I was, right? But at the same time, I like the thought process I went to and how much I grew by learning, by teaching myself these things. Yeah. But for instance, Cody was raised vegan, right? And his mom was a naturopath for like 30 years and vegan for like that amount of time. Mm-hmm. And that's part of where I got the ideas from, is I found out about her, right? Mm-hmm. So, but in this future we're thinking of that's coming from the precedent of forcing these vaccines on people, we could lose things like home birth, for one, which a lot of vegans like me want. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know, because any medical intervention, can be an infringement on your rights and another risk for you, right? Yes. Like a lot of vegan mothers talk about how they have horror stories about going into the hospital, being induced because their doctor wants to go on vacation and they need a time frame where they want to have the birth happen faster, right? And then the induction leads to a more painful birth, which leads to an emergency C-section, and then your et cetera. All these, all these interventions lead to more interventions, right? Yeah. Whereas if you do a home birth, it's like $6,000. Yeah. It's also just more natural, but yeah, interventions lead to more interventions. It's the case with situations in the hospital, but it's also the case with our government, right? So it's like, if they know that we will take this vaccine unquestionably, every single person, then you're going to give them an inch and they're going to take a mile. They're going to keep going with that. Yeah. And it's the same way. They might say, oh, you can't raise your kids vegan, or you can't raise your kids not vegan, or you can't do whatever. They just want more control. They'll say, oh, you can't homeschool. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be more and more little things till we get to the point where we are living in a country that is USA in name only, right?
Yeah.
Because right now we have the Constitution, we have the Bill of Rights, but are they following them? Not really. Like all these laws that we have in place are supposed to protect us from this happening, what's happening right now. But instead, what we have is they're just disobeying the law. Like the lawmakers are disobeying the law, and they're just going to keep doing it. If you look at the patterns are just going to continue. So like if you believe in any sort of freedom, it's like you said with cars, like I don't have a car and I don't have a gun. I live in New York City. Like, you know, everybody walks and takes the subway everywhere, and like guns are really hard to get, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to have both, especially now because this whole situation is scary and I don't know what they're going to do, right?
Yep.
And it's like when you look into getting a gun license or getting a driver's license, everything requires you to know someone else. Like if you look into, okay, I need to learn to drive, I need to get a certain number of hours behind the wheel, right? Like you have to know someone with a car or pay them, right? Like you can't just materialize a car and somebody with a license.
Yeah.
Or if you need a gun license, it's like you need a letter of recommendation from someone you know to prove that you're of good moral character.
Wow.
What does that mean? Right? Like in this time, would unvaccinated mean that I'm not of good moral character?
That's a very good point.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a really
Right?
good point, especially when, you know, we're not too far off from some sort of social credit score being introduced. And I think that would become the vehicle to take away even more rights. And I think that kind of the examples that you threw out are really good ones that I hadn't even thought through all the way.
I thought of a quote a little bit ago, and I want to tell you guys it while it's on the top of my head. Kind of goes along with this. Well, Elle and I, we've talked about, I mean, we always try to bring history into our episodes and just sort of look at the U.S. as its entire existence. And I think something that is interesting with our generation and even our parents and the generation above us is we've inherited freedom so much to the point where we just know that it's there. And we have never been forced.
We take it for granted.
We've never been forced to actually fight for our freedom like the people who founded America had to. So that is so interesting. And when you really think deeply on that, how different that makes us compared to the people who created America. And so this actually probably is the first time in a while where we, even young people like us, are up against really having to save it. And this is uncharted territory. It's tough. This is why there's so much political turmoil and moral turmoil and ethical things and discussion. And it's confusing, but this is why this is the most important time for people who have the capacity to critically think to make sure that that is the ultimate priority, because yeah, this stuff is just super dimensional, and the people who are governing us and want this control know that these things are dimensional, and they are 5 steps ahead. They want us to think as simplified as we can. They want us to not acknowledge all of the little details. They want us to fall for their propaganda. They want us to listen to all the hot celebrities and Met Gala people that are telling them to wear masks and whatever it is. They are very strategic, and so it's important to pick up on all that. So yeah, I wanted to include that.
No, I like what you said. I think that honestly, the generation that's had the hardest time grappling with this COVID stuff has been the baby boomers. And the reason why I say this is because if you look at, okay, who holds the most wealth in this country, it is the baby boomer generation. They're the generation that was born after World War II. So they didn't really experience the Great Depression or being part of the war effort. And they've also lived the longest. I mean, before their generation, human life expectancy wasn't this long, where you have people living to be like 80, 90 years old. And I think that it's interesting that COVID preyed on them to kind of steamroll this whole fear factoring agenda, because I think that Americans and just people in Western countries are not comfortable with the idea of death and suffering. I think that we've gotten to this point where, you know, and obviously everyone on an individual level has gone through suffering, and that varies. And I don't want to overgeneralize here, but even just talking to people that are like my grandparents' age, for example, they're just like, oh my gosh, how did we get here? Like, I can't believe this has been happening. How did we get here? Like, why is everything so messed up? And my perspective is it's actually been messed up for a really long time. It's just that we haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Like, if
now
people,
it's in the forefront.
Yeah. If people actually, like, I've been really enlightened during this whole period to really understand the bad things that like George Bush did during his administration, and even Bush Sr. and Bush Jr., and looking into a lot of things that people would consider conspiracies. But it's not that these politicians look down on us any less than they used to, because I think that they still, I think that 30 years ago, they wanted this outcome. It's just been a very slow process in implementation. And now we're here where it's very clear, and you can see an example like on Australia. You can go, you're living in New York and you don't feel comfortable to go on a subway without a mask. And now we're in this point where it's like, are you in or out? Like, are you for this or against this? And it's very clear. Like, there's no subtlety. There's no, oh, I'm just not going to like see what's going on. And once your eyes are opened, I think it's really hard to turn the other way and then be unawake. You know, it's like once you're awake, you can't go back to being asleep.
15 years ago, when conversations of the New World Order were already still, I mean, they were using the hidden in plain sight tactics even decades ago, but now they're completely blatantly obvious. I mean, there's whole books on the Great Reset and the New World Order and the 2030 plan.
Yeah.
Like, they're not being discreet. It is out there. And yet still people are like, What are you talking about? You're making that up. You're pulling that out of your ass.
You're a conspiracy theorist.
This is what they want to do. And I think that you'd be super naive and ignorant to not even at least consider and try to study up on the conversations that are in circulation.
Yeah. Why do you think that is, Chloe? Why do you think, have you seen a lot of people in New York that just don't want to be awake, or what do you think their mindset is?
Well, I think part of it is it's so surreal and so scary. So it's like, it's easier to think, oh, the government has my best interest in mind, and all these pharmaceutical companies do, and everything else. You know, it's like you're talking about the baby boomers, right? Like how their life expectancy is so high. Well, I think that they've been brainwashed to believe that that's because of drugs. Like if you look at, they're like, oh, we had so many medical advancements. That's why I'm living so long, right? Meanwhile, a bunch of baby boomers are on a million freaking drugs at once, right?
They can't
and
even
it's
walk.
actually hurting their health.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of old people you talk to are eating terribly, not exercising, and they're on all sorts of interventions. And each intervention makes it so they have to take another one. It's, you know, like the whole first do no harm thing is thrown out the window. It's like first make money, you know, it's like just give us all the money and we'll just keep giving you more drugs. Right. Yeah. But so it's like, if you're living longer and your body is messed up and you can barely function, like, what are you living for exactly? Like what kind of life is that? Whereas you actually can live longer naturally. And the beauty of today is that we have all of that knowledge out in the open. You can say, if you want to be healthy, you can actually find out how and do it yourself. You don't need to hire someone to tell you how to do it, right? Yeah. You don't need a personal trainer or a nutritionist or whatever. You can do all that yourself. Yeah. And so it's like, I think that the do-it-yourself thing is what's kind of saving us. Because, like, if you look at me and Cody, right, we make films independently, truly independently, not independently IFC style, where you still have the film unions and everything.
Yeah, not
right?
A24 independent films.
Yeah, not A24.
Yeah.
I'm talking like some of these movies cost nothing.
Yeah.
Some of these movies cost $200. Some of these movies,
Yeah.
and like nobody's getting paid. We're just doing it for the love of it. Right.
Yeah.
That is the kind of attitude that's going to go forward. It was already coming before this pandemic happened. Right. The internet like was already giving us the opportunity to do things independently, entrepreneurially, in the spirit of what the United States was founded on, which is individuals prospering, right?
Yeah.
But like, the traditional idea of capitalism versus the corporate monopoly crony capitalism that we're seeing now, where corporations are basically governments in and of themselves, right?
Or sold out to China or to other governments. Yeah, and that's something that we talk a lot about on this podcast is the difference between true capitalism and true decentralized markets and an individual freedom and us being able to put our money where we want it and things being truly decentralized versus, this corrupt capitalism. And it's very interesting because I think when you look at like history and even in the short term, like in the 70s and the 60s, for example, people that were on the left or were liberal and were true liberals, they were skeptical of big pharma. They were the people that ate naturally. Yes. They were the people that avoided animal products. They were the people that were skeptical of the CIA. They were the people that didn't like big corporations, didn't like big corporate America, wanted to shop local. And now it's been this flop where people on the left still are getting that badge of I'm a good person, I'm for the individual, all this stuff, but they're actually in line with the pharmaceutical companies. They're in line with big corporations. And I just don't see how you can be liberal and support any of these COVID lockdowns or mandates or across the board, because this has been the biggest transfer of wealth that our country's seen in over a century. I mean, closing down all these businesses and then saying what's essential and what's not. And, out of all the restaurants, the only ones that were allowed to stay open were these fast food chains. When all these local small businesses shut down, it just makes me sad that people don't even understand the true definition of what they claim to be.
Yeah. The people who say they affiliate with that classical liberal category are not behaving liberally.
No.
Are not encouraging liberation. They're the complete opposite. Yeah, it's totally flipped.
And then they go even down the rabbit hole and they're like, oh, I'm for socialism and for, these like Marxist ideas. And I'm like, okay, if a big company has this stuff on their website, like the key words that we look for now, they don't actually care about gay people's rights or black people's, like it's all just messaging, and you're now giving them a free pass for them to do whatever they want. And so it's this like weird new like currency that we're living in. And it's sad to me because now I get painted for being potentially far right, for being against big pharma. Like when did that happen? Like I don't know. Like it's like funny when you think about it. But
it's so fun.
That's just the world we're living in, I guess. I don't know.
I think that
that's one of the reasons. Like, sorry.
No, go ahead, Chloe. I'll save it.
I was just gonna say that's one of the reasons again why I don't trust the BLM movement, even though I'm sure there's lots of people in it who really are great. And yeah, police brutality sucks. It's one of the worst things ever. I don't deny that. But when you see banners for something on the library in New York City, like giant banners bigger than me across the biggest library in Park Slope or whatever, right? Or you see signs in the windows of every chain restaurant or whatever, or you see it on every website, then how do you not realize that it's co-opted? That it's co-opted by the corporations and government. Like, it's just like how with, fast food lobbyists and everything, they talk to politicians, right? Pharma talks to politicians. It's all connected.
Yeah.
So when you realize that we're eating bad food because it makes us sick so that we can get on drugs. And then everybody in that loop makes money. That's why my sign, the other side of my sign says, if you are healthy, they lose money. You know?
I love that.
We get in these medical loops.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
yeah, it's like, if you realize that all of these things, the things that the media promotes, if you see the media promoting a movement, then it's probably not an organic movement, because they ignore our movement. They barely show it on TV. That's one of the reasons why you don't know about these protests. Like, a lot of the time, a lot of the people who we talked to on the street, they didn't even know it was a thing that people were marching about medical freedom. Right.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't know until.
Yeah. How did you find out?
I went like, so, there's this guy, I forget his name, but he's, he did he made the signs, right, that said we do not discriminate against race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, vaccinated or unvaccinated, right? Yeah. And so that video, I saw it on Twitter, because Cody saw it and he shared it. I saw it. And then I joined the Discord for that. And then when I was on the Discord, they were talking about a protest they were going to have. And like the next day or two, it got taken down. But I saw it in just the perfect time frame where it planted the seed in my head, where I realized there were protests going on.
Wait, Discord took it down?
Yeah.
Wow. It's like the whole server, or was it the person who started the server?
Yeah, the whole server. They took the whole server down, and they won't let it go back up. It's not like a jail thing. It's literally just gone.
I would think that Discord would be the most loose with that type of stuff. Obviously, you couldn't use Facebook, or you couldn't use Instagram, Twitter, anything like that. But I would think Discord would. Oh my gosh, how do we even do this now if there's no platforms that we can use?
Well, Telegram. I don't have Telegram personally, but everyone I talk to at the protests use Telegram. They say the Telegram is the easiest way to not have it get taken down. However, I get all of my information through Instagram, and it's funny, it hasn't been taken down yet, but a lot of them have backup pages where it'll be like,
where
you follow that one too. And then if their first page gets taken down, you follow that one. But the New York Freedom Rally 2 Instagram, all one word, that's the one that says where all of the rallies are going to be. And when I was on Discord, I saw that and I followed it. And that's when I found out about all the rallies. And they've been doing this for like a year.
Wow.
But because the media is so silent on it, I just found out like a month ago when I wanted to protest the mandates, when the mandates went into effect. So I've been to 3 rallies so far. There's been more than 3. But if I went to every single one, I'd lose my mind. And a lot of people from the rallies would hate me for saying that, but like, that's true. I've talked to other people from the rallies, and it's like, if you live, breathe, and eat this every second of your life, you're going to lose your mind.
I've been in moments like that. I know that. I've had to walk my way out of it, just because I feel like it's something that gets discussed a lot with like my close circle, and it's something that's on my mind a lot. So I have to, I don't know. It was easier when we were back at school, but now with less activity, it's hard not to like always think about this
it's
stuff.
good to practice the compartmentalization of knowing,
really hard.
When you're ready to get into the mindset, go all in. But when I've found myself allowing those thoughts to like always just be circulating my brain, it drains me, and then I just get way too riled up. So
but before, when we first found out about like the Great Reset concept and the 2030 plan, and like dove into that like a year ago, it was basically a year ago, I couldn't record. We had to push back the recording like a few days because I was just so emotionally drained. Like, this is during the election stuff too. And I just remember crying at one point during all of that because it was just too much. And it was like, I was on Twitter so much, like refreshing, because I get all my information from Twitter. That's the main thing that I'm on. And it can be very addicting.
I'm on Twitter too,
Yeah. And we haven't even like...
Yeah, for sure. Twitter is particularly addicting.
Yes.
Agreed.
I'm very addicted. Jordan and I just send each other stuff all the time.
I wanted to point out something in reference to what you said, Chloe, when you were explaining just health and how this do-it-yourself culture can actually maybe save us, because we now have all the technology and the resources to go out on our own and do our research for ourselves. And we don't need to hire people and spend hundreds and thousands of dollars for quote unquote experts to teach us about our health and how to take care of ourselves.
Yes.
The only issue, though, that I do think is prevalent that I've even seen through like certain things that I've Googled or looked up. I try not to use Google, but a lot of people do. And I've noticed, even if you were to look up what type of seed oils are the healthiest, they will tell you what they want you to see. And most people are not aware of how catered all this information is, and do not want to go through to the 30th page on Google search results to maybe find the more informative pieces of information. So that's another big problem too. And it's so smart and devious and vile, I think, because it's so sad, because it's so awesome that someone wants to do that and go research and start that journey of discovering things on their own. But then it's like, they're not going to look at that information with a grain of salt, and then they just get the wrong information, and then they go down the wrong path, and then it's just a whole other cycle in itself, and it sucks. So
yes. I had that happen with a friend with. A lot of people have been confused about this Pfizer FDA approved thing, and they don't realize that it's actually a different vaccine that's gotten FDA approved, and the one that they're still distributing of Pfizer like is still only emergency.
I think,
No, not it's Comirnaty. Is that what it's called? It's biotech Pfizer, and they're calling it Comirnaty or something like that. It starts with a C. And so when they said FDA approval, which I don't know if you even know this, but when they said FDA approval, what they meant was that new COVID vaccine. The one that they're currently distributing, which is like the original Pfizer vaccine, is still only under emergency use. And so they're only distributing that because they have all these extra vials of it, and they haven't even really touched the biotech Pfizer one that's technically FDA approved. And when you read the contracts that got leaked between Pfizer and all these governments, we agreed with Pfizer that we would protect them from liability, and the only way that we can do that is by not making it FDA approved. So that is why people are still being distributed the one that isn't FDA approved. And a lot of people don't know this, and it's really hard to find that. Like, you have to go through reading like the real FDA papers, and the Children Health Defenders are a really good resource as well. But like the same thing happened with my friend, where she like questioned me. She's like, I'm not seeing this on my search. And I'm like, well, like, you got to do a lot more digging to like verify what I'm saying, and I'll do the work for you. But like, this is kind of frustrating that like you don't even believe what I'm saying on face value, and I have to go back in my research to like find to back up what I'm saying.
And they don't want to dig. A lot of people are lazy. They don't want to dig, and we're so used to having everything with the touch of a search button, and then we just take that as is at face value. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah, but I liked what you said about, and what Chloe said about the decentralization and the do-it-yourself model. Is that something that Cody and you have used a lot when you're producing films? Obviously, you guys do it on very cheap budgets. Do you go on YouTube and have researched different things in terms of how you do production or post-production?
We pretty much are entirely do-it-yourself. Like, he writes, directs, edits, does audio, does cinematography. He does literally everything. We don't hire anyone. Like, I'm really kind of, I guess you could call me a producer, because that's what I'm credited as. I'm like his extra eyes, ears, set of hands, mind. Like, it's like everything. I'm the person who knows the most about his films because I've been around for a while. Yeah. So it's like I'm like quality control, kind of, if that makes sense, because it's good for him to have someone there who knows what he does and why and how, because I've seen the process ever since the third film. Okay. And we've done 10 so far. Okay. And I've been involved in 8. Okay. So, so having me there, it's like, I just make it easier for him, you know? Yeah. But when we get actors, it's almost like just getting a friend. You know, we'll either get friends that we already know, or we'll get somebody from like backstage.com or something.
Okay.
And nobody's getting paid. We're barely getting paid. Like we just break even on the films pretty much. So it's like, yeah, eventually we'd like to make a living on it, but as it stands, like we barely make anything on them. It's more about the authenticity, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we put first. It's about everybody who's there wants to be there. They're not getting paid to be there. Mm-hmm. You know, on a large union, like Hollywood production, everybody's there because they want a credit and they want the money.
Yeah.
You know, and they're willing to work on stuff they hate, you know, and why is the quality is going to suffer if you're working on something you don't even care about at all, you know, and if you have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Like for us, it's just literally whoever's acting and us.
Okay.
And that's all that is on set.
That's,
you know,
that's awesome.
We set up the lights ourselves. We do all that ourselves. Yeah. But if you work with the film unions, which are basically the mob, it's a whole can of worms right there. Mm-hmm. I actually got in trouble with, I didn't really get in trouble, but Twitter people came after me. Like when I mentioned, so I mentioned to someone online that we make films without using any of the unions, right? Mm-hmm. We use non-union actors and we don't, you know, all that stuff. And this was in a conversation about me being unvaccinated. So the two things together freaked that person out because they were too traditional with the stuff. And they said, and they posted it and they showed all their friends, and then all the people who knew them, people who in their bio would say like screenwriter, mm-hmm. you know, like with their pronouns, and it's always with the pronouns when they come after you.
Gosh,
every time. Yeah.
No.
So
sorry, what were you saying?
So they all started tweeting at me and retweeting me saying, this woman mistreats her employees because she doesn't use vaccine mandates during her non-union productions and puts all their lives at risk. And I was like, for one, I don't have any employees. I was like, these are my boyfriend's films.
Yeah.
We don't pay anyone. They're all there of their own accord.
Yeah.
There's no contracts. The closest thing to a contract we ever have is we do release forms so that if someone decides randomly that they don't like us anymore after when the film's about to be released, they can't say, well, I'm in it, so you can't put it out.
Yeah.
You know, mm-hmm. We just have them sign a release form that says you can use this footage as long as you want.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the only thing we ever have anyone sign.
Yeah.
And no one has ever given us a hard time anyway. And once it came out that I was unvaccinated and that that we were doing it that way, you know, nobody complained. No, we work with actors from all stripes. Like it's like liberal, conservative, whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's never come up. The most that it's ever come up is people would say to me like, they would just randomly say when we met, if we hadn't met before, they'd say, I'm fully vaccinated, just so you know. And I'd be like, okay.
That's fine.
Yeah. You know, and I wouldn't even tell them my status. Like, and if people had come to us and been like, and asked before we did a production and said like, is everybody going to be vaccinated? Is everybody going to wear masks, etc.? Then we'd tell them the truth. We'd be like, I'm not, you know, like, so, you know, it's like, and Cody doesn't say his status, by the way, mm-hmm. Because it's none of anyone's business. That's the principle, is it's none of anyone's business. No. So why say even that you're unvaccinated or if you are vaccinated? There's no point to do that because then you're almost like complying with the thing in and of itself. It's almost like when you get a religious exemption, you're saying, okay, this mandate's okay as long as I can have my exemption. And it's like, no, it's not though. Like,
you don't need an exemption.
or if Yeah. Or if you're vaccinated and you hand them your vaccine card, you're complying. Even if you're saying, I don't like the mandate, you're still complying. That's why I stopped eating at restaurants that are letting me eat outside and be segregated from the people who eat inside with their vaccine cards.
Oh, wait, explain
I'm just
that. Sorry, explain. So what's happening with the restaurants?
So
what percentage of them would you say are doing some sort of vaccine, and what's this indoor versus outdoor? I don't know anything about this.
So it's all happened in phases, right?
Okay.
So for a while they were all closed, right? And then it was that they decided to only open for outdoors. And then, so a bunch of restaurants built those weird outdoor structures that are like in the street and got permits to do that. And of course that was extortion, because then the government can regulate those outdoor structures and charge them to put them there and all sorts of other things, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then, so that's another hit on everything is a hit on the small business. So it's like a hit on the small business to close them down, a hit on the small business to make them build these things that cost a lot of money, and only have outdoor seating, which is less seating, right?
Yeah.
And then they finally were like, okay, you can have both now. So now people have outdoor and indoor seating. And then they were like, okay, now if you want people to eat indoors, you have to have them show a vaccine card. And that was last month that they did that. And it's like if they're, it's almost funny, because like the more you see this stuff unfolding, when you look back on it, it's almost like you're realizing you were seeing foreshadowing for what was coming, that they were planning it all out, because they had them build these outdoor structures. And now they're literally segregating people. It's literally, I go to a restaurant, I say, can I sit down? They say, do you have a vaccine card? I say no. And then they put me outside like a dog. And so it's like, right? It's like,
I'm so sorry.
So why would you support that,
sorry.
right?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Are there any restaurants that aren't?
I went a couple times to places, then I stopped.
Are there any restaurants that aren't doing this, that are being defiant? Like, what would you say the percentage of compliance?
I don't know about the percentage, but I do know that restaurant attendance is down like 60%.
Wow.
That their revenue is dying badly because people are boycotting. And that's good. Honestly, like I hate to hit on the small businesses, because I know it's not their fault. Right. This is being imposed on them. But at the same time, they are the ones who can stop it. Like I said, these are mandates, not laws. So what's happening is they are using the businesses to impose the mandate, because they do not legally have the right to do so. So when they say you have to segregate people, if a business says no, they can threaten them with a fine. And you see the fines post, it says like it's a few $1,000s and stuff. But we have not heard any evidence of someone actually getting fined, just like with the train, right? So it's like, there's lists on Instagram. There's pages where they show all of the New York City area restaurants and barbershops and nail salons and whatever that are not complying. And so you can go to those specific ones. Problem for me is there's like no vegan ones, right?
Oh my God.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But there's one up close to the Bronx, really far up in Harlem, like up in Washington Heights, called Next Stop Vegan. They're vegan.
Shout out to them.
And they are not, they are not complying. I haven't been up there yet because I live so far away from there.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. I hope there's more like them. That's part of why I'm out there with my sign that says vegan and unvaxxed, is because I'm trying to show them that it's okay. We exist. Like, you can cater to us. We'll give you our money. Right.
Yeah.
But it's just weird. It's weird. There's definitely a lot of places, though. There's a lot of places that aren't vegan or have vegan options, that are allowing unvaccinated people to come in. And like I said, I haven't seen any evidence of them being fined, even though there's threats to fine them.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. It could have happened. I just didn't hear about it or something. But it seems like it would be hard for them to really, it seems like it would open a can of worms. If they actually find a place, that would create a lawsuit, that would create a whole thing, you know, just like with the teachers right now, they have their lawsuit that they've been doing where they're trying to get rid of the mandate for schools. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's almost like they
every
don't
time they
want
take
to
a step
fine
against
you.
someone,
They don't want to fine you because then they would create a lawsuit and then it becomes a constitutional thing and a law thing, and then you realize, you're in the wrong. Like the law's on our side, buddy. You know, and so you're right. It's almost like. I think again it goes back to just people not even knowing, like what Jordan was saying, we've inherited freedom for so many generations, we don't even understand like what our rights are and why we have these rights. And so when we hear something like a mandate, we don't even comprehend, okay, that's like different than a law. And I think it's unfortunate because if we hadn't gone along, like if even 30% of if 30% of like Trump's voting base had been like, no, we're not going to shut down, I think that we would be in a completely different category. I think that the fact that we even agreed to 15 days to slow the spread was shame on us. And I wish that
right.
And give an inch, they'll take a mile. That's what you said earlier.
And I think that like we can't blame ourselves because this is so uncharted territory, but that's the reality of it, is that now it's like, okay, like no more.
Big picture, and even going back to that time, I do think, like in a very general sense, it's much easier to rebuild after just an economic downturn, or rebuild businesses, or reopen these restaurants that are closing down. It's easier to rebuild economically. It is so much harder to rebuild freedom.
Yeah.
When we lose that, it's so hard to get that back. So
they're
totally different. And so I can't even believe that at the beginning of the pandemic, when we were contemplating lockdowns, that we sort of grouped the idea of freedom and like economic survival into the same category. Like that's basically what we did. We were stopping the spread, or we were slowing down for the fact of we wanted to save the economy. We didn't want to enter into another recession. But then, and that was a reasoning as to convince people why we're doing this, on top of safety, to encourage safety over the virus. But in the grand scheme of things, I do think that they're completely separate things. Like saving the economy and talking about finances, businesses, and all of that, totally different than the conversation of freedom. And I think that we've grouped those two together a lot.
Yeah, and there's never been a scenario where your freedom gets taken away and then the government gives it back. And I think that something as simple as the Patriot Act, we never got that back. And if anything, now they've used that as the framework to now throw out this word terrorist. And now we've expanded it to domestic terrorists, where now that's the president's job and the federal government's job is to monitor domestic terrorists. And now we're doing these things like the IRS is going to be tracking any sort of transfer withdrawal of over $600, supposedly because they want to keep tabs on billionaires. Scary. And then you have the COVID stuff, and you have the fact that now we've established that domestic terrorist applies to the Patriot Act. We've now put this new definition on what a domestic terrorist is, which is you're an unvaxxer, you're far right, you're a conspiracy theorist, these general blanket statements. And now we have the infrastructure and these mandates to enforce like the things that are taking away your freedoms. And when you see it that way and you can trace it back, you really can see like this isn't even like a right versus left thing. This is really about the people versus a very small minority of people that pull the strings at the end of the day. And I think that that's why the internet censorship stuff is been high priority, like what you were saying with the Discord situation, because the scariest thing for the government is the fact that you can be independent now and make money. Like the fact that Cody is able to learn all these skills, be able to put a product out there that might be just as interesting, if not more interesting and more artistically true and valid than a multi-million-dollar production film. And same thing with our podcast, like the fact that, I mean, Jordan and I started this with not knowing anything about podcasting, and we've slowly built this over 2 years, and we continue to do so. And then we're going to hopefully move into a monetization period. And like that scares them. That's like us being generalists, us having all these different skills, and then being able to execute it and then figure out a way to make money. Then you don't have to be a cog in the machine, and you don't have to rely on a union or something to that extent to vouch for you. And then you're not enslaved to anyone. And that's the ultimate thing that scares them. Yeah. And that's why the government has been so weird about the internet recently, because the internet was a very freeing tool.
It allows us to have resources. Yeah. No, you're so right. I love that.
And every time they try to bring Facebook to Congress, like with this whistleblower thing.
Oh gosh.
It's always, I think they're betting on the people assuming that they're coming after social media for the things we don't like them doing, like censorship and shadow banning and all sorts of stuff. But really what they're doing is they're coming after social media for not doing more of the things we don't like them doing.
Yes.
So that's a really important distinction, because when people see Facebook whistleblower and when people see the internet or the social media companies going down and everything, they're like, yay, it's working. Like, we're finally getting our voice. And it's like, it's getting worse.
Yeah. Once again, they're 5 steps ahead. They know exactly what our reactions will be and how we won't actually look into it and see what the psychology is behind it. And then in turn, what it does is we're then excited for them to censor us more. And then we get upset, and it's just like a continuous cycle. Yeah. I'm so glad you picked up on it. They give you a piece of information that sounds like you would like it. And then while you're focused on that, it becomes vague in your mind, and you don't notice them doing all these things you don't like under the guise of the thing that you do like, you know?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as like the climate change stuff or whatever. Like, it's like, oh, yay, we'll save the environment. But really, they're putting all these things into the law. The law that like you don't want there, right? Yeah. They're using it against you. It's like, I was talking to you before the podcast started about sanctuary cities.
Oh, yeah.
That's like really New York is a sanctuary city. And it's like, oh, we're going to help these immigrants, right? But it makes it so there's no transparency between the federal government and the New York City government. So that creates all sorts of corruption, right?
Yeah.
So they're using our emotions against us, and we have to be vigilant. We have to make sure that we pay attention to what's happening. It's even with stuff like laws. It's like you were talking about with mandate versus law. They bet on us not knowing what things mean, right? Like right now, the teachers in New York City, because they all got fired, they keep going to the courthouse to get this injunction to stop the mandates. The same day, yesterday, or the day before, I can't remember, they went to the courthouse and they were trying to get their injunction. And then it came up in the news that day, the religious exemptions have been granted for COVID-19 vaccines in New York City, right? And I was like, yay, maybe they got it, right? For a second, my stupid brain that they want to be stupid was like, oh, yay, they won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't win. They didn't get their injunction, but they released that information at the same time because they want to confuse you. They want to make you think that you're winning when you're not, so that you stop fighting, you know? It's good. Like... There's going to be a lot of people who see something like that and they're going to say, well, why are people on the street protesting vaccine mandates? We don't have them anymore, or something like that, you know? They're not going to understand the details, and that's what they're counting on, you know?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And Jordan and I, we've had a few friends too that agree that the vaccine mandate stuff is bad and that they don't want it, but they've made comments like, oh, well, I could just live in Florida, or I could just live in Texas, and I'm like, that's really naive of you, because like they're coming, like if you don't fight for California and New York now, there's just a matter of time till then they implement that in your states. And
do you want to run or do you want to fight? Do you want to be a runner? Like, I mean, that's
why I'm here.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
It's like, okay, I'm from Kansas City, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they don't technically have them there. They have mask mandates, but they don't have vaccine mandates, right?
Yeah.
They, like every right-wing person I see on the internet is like, leave the cities, right? And eventually I'd like to leave the cities so that I can have some land and raise a family and have nature and everything. That's great. But right now I'm here to fight. Like right now, this is where the action is. Like everything that happens here is going to come to my hometown. It's going to come to everywhere else.
Yeah.
You can't just run by leaving, because it's all going to catch up to you eventually. So you have to fight. You know, it's like if we can show them as New York that we're not going to put up with it, then that's going to make a huge difference for not only the rest of the country, but the rest of the world. Like I have, like one of the movies that Cody and I made, the one which is the only one I co-wrote that I starred in.
Oh, wow,
Attack of the Giant Blurry Finger.
Okay.
That one we made for $0 on an iPhone.
Okay.
Yeah, it's released. It's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
Yeah, we made that one for $0 on an iPhone. Just a warning to anybody who's young. It's very raunchy.
Okay.
Very, very R-rated.
Okay.
But it's the only one out of all the films that's that R-rated. But my point is, that one, for some reason, after it got released, became really big in Brazil. Like a lot of people in Brazil will message me and be like, I love that movie. Right?
That's awesome.
And I don't know why. They just really like it in Brazil. And so I saw, like, I was looking at stuff about, because you have to realize, even if you're not in New York right now, you can still march for freedom, because there's this thing called Worldwide Freedom Rally. Okay. Yeah. It's going on in all of the major cities of all the world. And you just have to look it up and try to figure out when your dates are. And then you can march at the same time as me, just in your city. Right.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah. And in some of these other countries besides the US, it's bigger than it is here. It's like huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's like
one of the ones.
Hundreds of thousands of people. And that doesn't get any coverage. Like, unless you're on Twitter and you're seeing this footage. I mean, it's in Italy, France. I mean, France, they're going nuts over there. UK, Greece, all these countries, even Australia. And we've seen it work in some of the Scandinavian countries. They've got rid of the vaccine mandate stuff, and they even have a higher vaccinated population than the US does. And so I think because we're such a big country, we've been so divided, we've done all these different types of approaches. I mean, during COVID, I was in between Texas, Arizona, and California, all different approaches and vibes. And so I kind of could run and escape when things got bad. And I will say, I don't feel like California has been fighting as much as New York has. Granted, the vaccine mandate hasn't gone into effect, but they had an opportunity to fight and get Newsom out of office. And Jordan and I talked about this. Yeah. There might have been some fraud issues with the COVID mail-in situation. I'm not
right.
I don't know. But if we are to take the election at face value, they chose not to do that, you know, and that was their choice. And at some point it's like, do you just let people sink or swim? I don't know. It's hard to figure out that line of when you're in a battle, when to fight and when to retreat. And that's why it's been really hopeful for me to see what's been going on in New York, because I do agree. I think that New York is the capital of the country and the capital of the world in terms of freedom. I mean, the Statue of Liberty is there. The Freedom Tower is there. It's where all the immigrants came to.
And it's a melting pot.
It's a melting pot. It's a beautiful place. And so I think if New York can pull this off, everywhere should be able to. And I think that'd be a huge win.
Beacon of hope for sure.
Yeah.
I agree. But what I was saying was just that, like, like, right, that movie's really popular in Brazil. I was looking at all the marches everywhere else. And the one in Brazil was massive. Like, if you look at the pictures of the one in Brazil, it's insane. It was because it was their Independence Day too. So it was like Independence Day combined with medical freedom.
Wow.
Yeah. And I shared it and I said, for all my fans of this movie in Brazil, I'm proud of you. You know?
That's awesome.
And like a bunch of them were like happy. Right. And then like, one of the guys who organizes those marches reached out to me and said, thank you so much, like, for what you're doing and everything. Aww. And like, and so like we're talking now and everything. And it's so funny because like I've talked to that guy more than I've talked to the leaders of the marches in New York.
Yeah.
Like, just because, you know, when people are too busy, they don't have time to talk to you. I've talked to more to people who aren't like leading it or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just crazy. It's amazing how worldwide this is. And like you were saying about the Newsom thing, like, they're lucky that they had Larry Elder running against him. They had like an alternative to vote for, even though they screwed it up and they didn't vote or it was rigged or whatever happened.
Yeah.
But here, they quietly replaced Governor Cuomo with
Governor
Hochul.
Meeple.
And Hochul's just as bad, if not worse.
Oh, she seems worse. She what would she say? Was she the one that was like, it's the Christian thing to do to get vaccinated? I'm like, what? Like, where?
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, and it makes the whole like
yeah, she was saying,
the whole sexual.
She was saying if you
I think we're okay. Go ahead. You guys go.
No, you're good.
I was going to say the whole sexual harassment coverage on Cuomo almost seems like some sort of smokescreen to get everyone's mindsets prepped for pushing Cuomo out of their heads and wanting to move on to this next candidate so that they didn't miss him and that they would accept her quicker and better. And so I don't know if
everybody
that's
was
been successful
rejoicing, but
yeah,
it's like they were all excited because he's gone, and it's like, but this is a person that we did not elect who is in office now. Do you really think that you can trust them?
It's
like
interesting.
They have all of the interests in mind.
Yeah,
it's almost worse.
I think it is worse.
Yeah. It's kind of like what you said. It's the same thing that happened with the Facebook situation where you think that you're getting a good deal and then the government's like, JK, like, no. Exactly.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like this, I don't know.
There's so much.
I could keep going on.
Chloe, we could go on and on. I want to say, just so we can try to wrap this up, I'm so glad that you're there and have this fighting mindset, because I want more people to have that. And you know what? Although I haven't moved to a big city where I can be on the ground at these massive protests, I am still going to try to continue doing my part. And I think that even just us coming on here and recording and having these discussions is also a little bit of a step too. So I want to still do that, and keep meeting people like you and building relationships, because it's fun to come across people that are from totally different backgrounds and careers and all these different facets of what makes us up, and still be able to bond over. It's basically freedom. Like, that's what we're bonding over, and that is super cool.
Yes.
And
yeah. No, I couldn't have said it better myself.
So, what is your Cody's production company called? I saw it's Kill the Lions Films.
Yeah, you're right on your
film.
Yes.
Oh, you got a shirt on. That's
awesome.
On my shirt, yeah.
Is that your all's logo? Right,
and I don't want any. Yeah, right here. I don't want anyone from the movement to think that it's like against the lions not sheep thing, because they'll say, like, a lot of the people in the movement will say lions not sheep, right? Like, that's just a phrase they like to use.
Oh, okay.
It's not like that. The whole lion thing has nothing to do with it. It's based on a Charles Bukowski quote that says, when things get bad enough, the kitten will kill the lion. So it's on the same page as
that's
y'all.
awesome.
Ooh,
I like that. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Where can people find...
And that was all Cody coming up with that.
Okay. Where can people find the films? YouTube?
So Several of them are on Amazon Prime and several of them are on YouTube.
Okay.
Attack of the Giant Blurry Finger is only on Amazon Prime because of its graphic nature. They would not let us put it as anything but rent or purchase. Okay. So that's the only one that's rent or purchase.
Okay.
The other ones, if you have a Prime account, you can watch them. Okay. But not all of them are up there because that's the thing I should talk about real quick.
Yeah.
Amazon has a lot of issues and a lot of perks. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. So the beauty of both Amazon and YouTube is that you can self-distribute and maintain ownership of all of your work. You don't have to have a contract of any kind. Mm-hmm. You're not giving them money. Sometimes with Amazon, they get a tiny cut of your viewership amount of money you make or whatever. Mm-hmm. But like, the point is you own your stuff. It's not exclusive. You don't have to only keep it on their platform, etc. Right?
Okay.
Yep.
And you make all of your own promotional materials and trailers and your covers and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But what they've done is, so we used to have DVDs of all of the movies, right? Like you can see, this is like a collection of all of them. Well, not all of them, it's 6 of them, 6 out of the 10.
Huh.
That was on DVD, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and we've got a whole bunch of other ones here. I'll show you the stack real quick. Yeah, it's hard to hold it.
I love that you guys have DVDs.
Yeah,
like
the tangible versions of the work. There's a lot there. That's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've made books too, because he does a lot of writing. Okay. And I also did two poetry books. This is one of my poetry books.
Is that available on Amazon, or do you just?
Wow.
Yes, that's available on Amazon. And this is my other one. And then this is the film that if you want to make independent films by yourself, you do not need to hire us. That's a thing that a lot of people in the movement, they've been trying to hire me to like make political. Well, I know it's not political. It's a human rights issue, but to make films about what's happening. Right. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. And that's not my job. Like what you need to do is you need to get this book, Kill the Lion, because awesome. This is about how you make your own movies without Hollywood, and anybody can do it. Cool. Not just us. Okay. So the idea of like when people come up to me and they say, "Can you make a movie for me?" I'm like, we make movies for us. Like we're trying to channel the muse here and like do stuff that's authentic. If we make a movie for somebody else, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to feel as genuine, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my contribution to the movement is the fact that one, we're not complying with mandates when it comes to making the films, and mm-hmm. two, I'm marching, right?
Yeah.
And I'm speaking out. But my point is, when you see those DVDs, right, those aren't available anymore. We have a ton of those DVDs in a box that we sell to people sometimes, but they stopped making them because Amazon used to have a thing called print on demand, where you would make your own covers and stuff and send it to them. Excuse me. And then they would print it every time one was ordered. So it cost a lot less money.
Okay.
That was a great thing for independent filmmakers, because usually even if you don't have a distributor, and don't get a distributor, by the way, because it's really bad. It's just, you don't make any money. It's horrible. But if you self-distribute, even if you do it that way, so print DVDs, you usually have to order hundreds at a time. And that's very expensive, right? Mm-hmm. So Amazon had this great thing for us. And then I can't remember if it was like right at the beginning of the pandemic or beforehand, they ended it. They just said, we're not going to do print on demand anymore. They still do it for books. That's how we did our poetry books and all that stuff. And he's done novels, and that's how he did the Kill the Lion book and all that. Mm-hmm. But they don't do it for DVDs anymore. So we're only on streaming now.
Interesting.
And that's one of the reasons why he started putting all of his movies on YouTube. Because it used to be that he had all of his movies on Amazon. And we got burned even before the DVD thing happened, because with like one of the ways that you can help an independent filmmaker out, if you see that you like one of their movies, review it with 5 stars. If you don't like it, just go away, don't review it.
Yeah, don't give a bad
the
review.
reviews the reviews actually make a huge difference as far as viewership.
Yeah.
If you go on Amazon and you like a movie, if you give it a good review, it actually has more likelihood of staying on there. What happens is if an independent movie doesn't have like a good ratio of reviews, or even if it has a good one, but it's not perfect or something, sometimes they'll just arbitrarily take it off their platform. And that's what they did with Cody's movie Bed.
Oh no.
It's a great movie. It's a movie we shot just like we were the only crew. We shot it in 10 hours at an Airbnb, and it was all rehearsed based on a novel he wrote.
Wow.
It's an amazing movie.
It's just gone.
It's on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay.
It's gone from Amazon because they took it down because it had 4 stars and that wasn't enough.
What?
Like that's yeah.
That's not fair.
They just do this arbitrarily.
There's so many movies that I've seen on there that have had way less than 4 stars.
I hate when these
because those are big studio movies and they don't care about that. They're getting money from those people. They're not getting money from us.
Yeah.
So, but the funny thing is, one way that Amazon helped us is that the movie Ramekin, which I've got here, I'll show you.
Now this is your all's most popular one, correct?
Yes, the most popular one. I'm just trying to find it. Here it is. So this is Ramekin, right?
Yeah.
Starring Jamie Saunders, who's wonderful. One of our best friends. So that made Amazon recommends, like where it goes to the front page and you see all of them. It got recommended to people who would never be interested in indie film whatsoever. And that's how it got like really popular. And it's funny because it was made for $500.
Oh my
so it's next to movies that, it was recommended next to movies that were made for like millions of dollars.
It's crazy.
That's how awesome it was for us, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's
so
super cool.
A lot of people,
But that's
so
like what we
a
were
lot of
saying,
people you talk to them and they're like, what were you saying?
Well, I'm just saying that's really, I mean, not only is that a great testament to your all's work, but again, I think it goes back to like that's scary for Amazon or studios or whatever. Because,
exactly. And
like,
I think that's why they got rid of the DVDs.
Yeah, because if you can be like, oh, here's this film that was made for $500 and it's just as popular as these multi-million-dollar productions, is that because you see the inefficiency of those other films potentially, and you're exposing an inefficiency there, and that's the only way to expose it. Otherwise, it's going to keep existing. And by showing a contrast, then you're bringing to the table, okay, does that type of film, those films need to exist anymore? Or is that an antiquated way of doing something? And if you're in that industry, you don't want that. You don't want that narrative to break true. And that's the same thing that's happened in the news world with Joe Rogan or big podcasters. I mean, some CNN shows are under like 1 million views.
I know the ratings are horrible.
Yeah.
Or SNL, for example. Like SNL ratings are horrible.
Yeah. SNL's propaganda out the wazoo too.
SNL
I watch it
is
just to see what they're gonna do next, and like,
it used to be so good. It used to be so good, and now it's just complete utter trash. It's complete trash.
That's why
and
I
it's
watched
sad. It's not even funny anymore.
on Saturdays.
Yeah. Go ahead.
One of the latest SNL episodes, they were on Weekend Update. It said, when we left, there was the election and all this stuff happening, a lot to talk about. And now we're coming back and the biggest news is infrastructure. And it's like, no, it's not.
That's
y'all
the biggest news.
Lying.
Yeah.
Like,
I think I could think of probably
like
a million and a half
mandates.
1.5 million other things that are just as important, if not immensely more important than that. But they don't. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that makes me mad.
Yeah, they're just straight up lying. Lying. But yeah. Anyway, so we put as a sort of like a way to be like, well, screw you, Amazon. We put all of the movies on YouTube as well. 7 of the movies on YouTube for free.
Okay.
And there's a big movement, the folk filmmaking movement, where they put movies for free on YouTube. A lot of friends of ours are part of it.
Okay.
Our friend Joel Haver makes his entire living on YouTube and Patreon. He does short films and feature length films and animations. And that's just his whole life. He's traveling around the US in a van right now, making shorts with everybody. We've been in several of his shorts. So if you ever go up on YouTube and find Joel Haver, you can probably see and search my name or something. You probably see ones that I've been in. Okay. But he proved kind of that you can make your whole living doing it without the system, right? Mm-hmm. And we're just doing the same thing. We just started on Amazon, then we went to YouTube, basically. Yeah. So there's going to be more of us. It's not just with film, but with everything, right? Yeah. That's what's going to happen is that the unforeseen consequences of this pandemic that the powers that be have created is that they are going to accidentally create a lot of badass entrepreneurs who are going to create families and who are going to tell those families never to let this stuff happen again.
I love that. I couldn't think of a better way to end this because I was having a conversation with my dad yesterday, and I was explaining to him how, because I was making the decision between working for a bigger, like a corporate environment in real estate, or coming back and working with him in real estate. And I decided to do the latter, even though traditionally people are like, oh, like you need that 3 or 4 years of experience. And granted, I had experience because every internship that I'd ever done in college was in the field, and my major was related to that. So it's not like I don't have experience, but people are like, oh, you need several years of being like an analyst and getting really specific in that. Like you can't jump to something where you're taking on a role that's so general and you're managing all these different transactions. And I want the same thing for myself. I want to be my own boss. I want to figure out how to make money doing that. I want to figure out how to structure both passive income, but also active income, which is things that I love and that are passion projects. And then I want to have a family, and I want to instill my values in them and into the next generation. And I know Jordan wants that too. And I love to hear that is what you think you want to do and what the future is going to be like. And I totally agree. And I think that will be the positive thing that comes out of all of this, is that we're re-examining everything. We're re-examining college. We're re-examining being specialized. We're re-examining living in cities forever. We're re-examining our health, reproductive health. A lot of stuff has come out about that. That all this birth control and IUDs and all the stuff, it really does take a toll on your body. So yeah, and I just want the future to go that way. And
me too.
Yeah.
I love that quote.
I wish I had realized it earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you saying?
I was just going to say, I love that quote you said about the entrepreneurs. And I've written down so many things you said tonight, so we'll put them somewhere.
Thank you.
Sure. Stay tuned. But
thank you.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Where can people find you? Oh yeah, sorry. Continue. What were you saying?
Oh, so me specifically, you can find me. My Instagram is Chloe is on Insta WTF with underscores in between the words.
Okay.
Which is kind of annoying. I might change it at some point, but Chloe is on Insta WTF underscores.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm also on Twitter as Chloe Peas, all one word. And that sounds really vulgar, but it's just like a joke because I drink a ton of water and
Chloe
my
Peas.
last name starts with P, and I also like to piss people off, and it's just, I'll probably change that at some point too, but right now, yeah, that's what I am. And Cody is on Instagram. He's Kill the Lion, all one word. And on Twitter, he's Cody Clark, all one word. And that Clark has an E at the end.
Okay, cool.
And if you want our YouTube, just go to Cody Clark with an E at the end, and it has 7 of our feature films on it, including Ramekin and Mute Date, which you watched. I know.
Yeah, it was really
which
good.
is the closest a film comes to being about anything political, which it isn't even really. It just has to do with censorship in a way. It has themes that have to do with censorship and social media. You can also just search the films on Amazon. Some of them are on Amazon. And sorry, I keep making that noise with my mouth. It's bad for the mic. My bad.
Oh, it's okay.
It's all good.
What else? I would also say I really wish that I had realized I wanted a family sooner, which that is the case with so many women these days, right? Because we're brainwashed into thinking that being a mother is disempowering when really it's extremely empowering. And I've learned so much about all of that stuff in the recent years, and it's made me want to be a mother really badly. I'm in my early 30s, and I'm scared that I won't get my shit together fast enough to have kids, but because I'm healthy, I think I'll be fine, right? Yeah. But I was on the pill for on and off for 9 years, and it is so bad on your body. And now I haven't taken a pharmaceutical of any kind since I think probably 2018 or something.
Good for you.
So
Yay.
Love that.
So it's funny because my picture was in an article by The Conversation that said, it was my picture that said vegan and unvaxxed, right? And and it said, it was an article that had the headline, it was people who are healthy think that they can avoid or that they can skip the COVID-19 vaccine. An expert says why the answer is no. And so they used my picture in a propaganda piece, and they talked about how exercise and healthy diet actually do improve your immunity dramatically, but because it's not 100%, you still need to take the vaccine, they said. And they also talked about how if you're willing to take birth control pills and aspirin and risk that, then how is the vaccine any different? And that's what made me really mad, was because I know how bad birth control pills are for you. And I literally don't take any of them or anything like that. And so to use my image and say, to compare the two and say, oh, you should take them both. It made me so mad.
Yeah. I feel that.
Everyone go comment on that article.
Yeah.
It's funny. One of my friends went and commented on the article angry, and then they didn't let his comment go up. So
wow.
I don't know how many comments they'll actually let go up if you comment on it. And people have told me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, they've told me people keep saying, oh, you should sue them or email them to tell them to take it down. But I think I'm like Trump. I'm like, any press is good press,
Yeah.
I'm like, people will see my picture. If they see that the article's bullshit, they're going to look for me.
Yeah.
They're going to find me instead, and they're going to follow me. So I'm like, all right.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
And they weren't talking about me specifically. It's not like they're saying this woman believes this or whatever. They don't even know who I am. But, you get the idea.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Another thing I want to make sure I talk about before we go is one of the things you can do if you want to help the cause, so to speak.
Oh yeah, this is good. Yeah. There's if you live in New York, one of the guys who marches with us is named Dabby Carreras. He's running for comptroller. He's amazing. His whole platform is that he does not want corruption with the money in New York City anymore, which is huge because New York City has been about money corruption forever. So he basically is the one who told me about the sanctuary city laws and about the way that New York is purposefully creating a state of emergency so that they can mess with us and everything else. So, and what's crazy is he was in a debate with the conservative candidate, because they have two candidates. They have a Republican candidate and a conservative candidate. He was in a debate with him on Decision NYC. Is he the conservative
which you can find on YouTube?
Or the Republican one?
He's the Republican one.
Okay.
Republican.
Okay.
But he's really a moderate. He believes in the Constitution and stuff and limited government. So he ran as Republican, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So he was a Republican candidate. The Democrat candidate, Brad Lander, refused to debate them whatsoever. And then they put him on the same show in an interview by himself that's as long as their debate. So he got his own little puff piece, and they didn't do that for either of them. So to me, that's just cheating, right?
That's sus.
That's sus. It reminds me of the debate situation that we had where they canceled the second U.S. debate and then did a town hall instead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Something's weird. Something weird went on with that.
Yeah. But then, so on top of this, he messages me today, because this is how cool he is. He messages me, right? I've never had a politician look my way whatsoever, but he messages me, and it's not a robo message. And he says, so it looks like the debate that's happening, I think he said October 21st, but I might be wrong. He said that debate on New York Spectrum News, New York 1, which is like one of the biggest channels ever, he might not get to be in it because of his medical status, right? And that and if that happens, that he wants us all to rally outside of the Chelsea studios. To show everyone that the candidate who is against corruption is not getting let debate because of his medical status, which is exactly what's happening to us, right? So it's like that's a big deal.
What's the best way to support him?
So it's like,
does he have a campaign website? Or like a place
I'm sure he does,
money?
but if you go to his Instagram, it's Vote Dabby, all one word, DABY. Vote Dabby. So
yeah, we'll definitely.
If you go to that, you can probably
find everything else.
He'll probably have like a website on there and stuff. So but yeah, the point is like that. If you live in New York, that's a way to support, is to vote for him on November 2nd. And I'm not paid to say that. Nobody told me to say that. He didn't ask me to say that. Like, I had a conversation with him for like an hour in Times Square at midnight after one of the rallies. Like, that's how dedicated he is.
Oh, that's awesome.
This
really
guy's like
on the ground
fight for us. So yeah, for real. Like, he just carries a flag like in front of us during the whole rallies every time. And he's amazing.
I love that.
I respect that.
Yeah. Plus he's not white. So that's another reason why we think he has a chance of winning.
That's what they thought was going to happen with Larry Elder, but apparently they wanted the Barbie Ken doll. So I don't know. Well, thank you, Chloe, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
This was an awesome episode. This is one of my favorites that I think we've done so far. So much information. I think that our viewers are really going to appreciate your story and the information that you were able to give, just as being a first eyewitness to all this that's going on in New York. And we look forward to like hearing updates. Definitely update us with anything that's going on.
We'll be in touch for sure.
Yeah. Anything else to add, Jordan?
Yeah, for sure. And
send us all of the links to your guys' work so we can put it in the YouTube description and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sure. And I'm going to try to set up a Patreon for myself. I haven't done it yet just because like I'm technically unemployed right now. And they ended unemployment right when they started the mandates, which is a big dick move to try to get everybody to get vaccinated. So I'm going to try to start a Patreon, but I don't have one yet, but so that I can, and a YouTube of my own, so that I can try to like speak out more and things like that. So I'll let you guys know if that goes up at any point. But for now, just like go to our YouTube, go to our Instagrams, go to our Twitters, go to whatever. And Cody has a website that's literally killthelionfilms.com, where he is trying to make it so that we're fully funded so that we don't have to do things like GoFundMe's anymore for our movies, because that's how we usually fund them now. Basically, like his idea is if like, I think it's like 2,000 people or something, like a certain number of people donated $2 per month, then we would basically be fully funded and we'd live off of it and make movies. So
be sick.
Go to that website.
Go to that website if you like the content and sign up.
Yes. It's easy. Go do it. Okay, well, to our audience, thank you guys for listening to this episode and for watching if you're on YouTube. We appreciate you. And we will see you soon.
Yeah, like
I
and
guess.
subscribe and give us some feedback in the comment section, as you always do. We appreciate
Yes.
it.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye.
Yes.